Good morning, and welcome to the Boulder Valley Unitarian Universalist Fellowship. I'm Nicolette Toussaint, your service associate for this morning, and my pronouns are she and her. I'm joined this morning by Reverend Barbara Koyman, who's leading our service, and today's music is provided by Julie Morris and Amy Austin. Today's tech team is Larry Sherwood, Charlie Morris, and Deborah Mensch. Thank you. As I said the welcome words today, I invite you, those of you on Zoom, to shift into gallery mode and look at the faces around you. If you are in person, you can look around and see all of our UU friends. This morning, I invite you to really take in these welcome words and imagine how it might change the way you act with people who you're just getting to know. You are all welcome here today in all the beauty of languages, cultures, skin tones, shapes and sizes, gifts and challenges. Everything that comes together in your uniqueness, you are welcome here. In all the ways you experience and express gender, you are welcome here. In all the beauty that is who you love and how you love, you are welcome here. In all the ways you make your living and the places you are from, you are welcome here. With all the traditions that inform your spiritual life, you are welcome here. No matter how long you're away or how soon you will return, welcome here. Whether you come with laughter in your heart or tears, you're welcome here. You are invited to join us with a curious mind, a loving heart, and a willing spirit. We welcome you today. If you're new here, we are glad you found us and hope that in this community, whether you're with us in person or virtually, you can experience the warmth and love of this congregation. Please come back a few times to get to really know us. We have many opportunities during the week for social connection and spiritual growth. Those on Zoom will find links in the chat that help you get connected. And if you're here in person, stop by the welcome table in the foyer and fill out a newcomer form. It's also in a QR code on the back of the hymnal. There is a zebra code on the overhead, and that gives you, if you hold your camera up, that will give you today's order of service. And I should add, if you bookmark that in your browser, it's the same every week. You don't have to use the QR code each time. So some of us are a little challenged with QR codes. Everyone on Zoom is welcome to stay for casual conversation following the service. If you're here in person, you're welcome to come to coffee hour in the fellowship hall. So take a moment here and greet your neighbor, and if you're joining us on Zoom, greet each other in the Zoom chat, and if you're a newcomer, be sure to let us know so that we can make you feel at home.
Good morning to everyone. It's good to see you this morning. I'm Reverend Barbara, the grateful minister of this congregation. My pronouns are she and her. It is our tradition in Unitarian Universalism to light our chalice. I invite you to join in the chalice lighting words as Nicolette lights the chalice. We light this chalice Friends, I have a different kind of call to worship this morning. And I start with a question. When you come here to worship in the room or online, do you tend to sit in the same place every Sunday? I would like to bring a new mode sponsored by the recent Circles of Trust class. This is by invitation only, here and on Zoom. I invite you to get up and sit in a different place in the room this morning. Please, go, do, as you wish. Sit in a different place. Larry, Paul, Scott, can you hand me a hymnal? Hand me hymnals, please. There's no hymnals here. Hymnal, I need hymnals. So once again, a good morning. I won't ask who moved and who didn't. As we come together in music this morning for our opening hymn and the theme of our service this morning, I invite you to turn in the gray hymnals to number 113 and on the screen and online on Zoom. Join in singing, "Where is Our Holy Church?" Please rise in body or in spirit.
Where is our holy church? Where risen class unite, as equal persons in the search for beauty, truth, and light. Where is our holy writ? Where'er a human heart a sacred torch of truth has lit, by inspiration taught. Where is our Holy One? A mighty host respond. The people rise in every land to break the captive's bond. Where is our holy land? Within the human soul, wherever free minds truly seek with character the goal. Where is our paradise? In aspiration's sight, wherein we hope to see arise 1,000 years of right.
Those of you who looked at the website or the newsletter may have been expecting Paul Gibb as the service associate today, and you may have noticed that I'm not Paul Gibb. I am Paul's ninth cousin, and I am reading his truly, we are ninth cousins, going back to Salem, Massachusetts. I am Paul's ninth cousin, and I am reading his reflection this morning since he's having some health issues. Paul has been a member of 6 Unitarian Universalist churches over the past 75 years and has witnessed the preaching of 10 ministers. As an aside, I've also been a member of 6 UU churches, and I've been familiar with the preaching of 25 UU ministers. I made a list yesterday, and I fully endorse what Paul wrote this morning. Paul notes that his daughter and her husband are ordained UU ministers, and he says, "I learned a lot by seeing them in the pulpit and seeing how much hard work they do." Paul continues, "Here's the short version of what I have to say about ministry. Mainly it's this: no congregation is ever perfect, and no minister is ever perfect. We're all human beings. In every congregation, nearly every individual has at least a slightly different set of needs and expectations. What is important is to have a degree of openness on each side. And of course, a sense of forgiveness, especially if coupled with a sense of humor, can make a huge difference. The ministers who were mostly liked by their congregations tended to focus at least a portion of every service with something that touched our souls, while the few who spent all their preaching time on political or intellectual or theological matters were not as well likely to be well liked by all members. Of course, a certain amount of political or intellectual or theological matter can be there, but when they become the sole substance of a sermon, not everyone will latch on. Paul continues, all 10 of the ministers of the 6 UU churches I have attended have added something wonderful to my life, some more than others, of course, and I've never regretted attending. When new ministers were installed, I always received something that was meaningful and joyful, although, of course, in some ways different from what I received from the previous minister. In most every case, I lamented the loss of the previous minister for a while, but I got over it in a few months. We should always remember that being a minister is one of the most difficult and demanding jobs there is. First off, to come to your church, they've probably had to leave their previous home and friends and move many miles away. Secondly, unlike most employed people who have to please only one person, the boss, a minister has to try and please hundreds of people. Third, if the minister has a partner and or children, they may have all kinds of tasks that aren't in their church portfolio. They can easily get burned out. As we go forward with our search for a new minister, may we never forget that they are human, like us. Each is unique as we are, lovable human beings living in a somewhat imperfect world. And once again, what's important is to have a degree of openness on each side. And of course, a sense of forgiveness, especially if coupled with a sense of humor, can make a huge difference.
If the real Paul is watching this morning, Paul, we love you. Friends, we come now to that time in our service for the sharing of the personal, the joys and concerns, the celebrations and the heartaches. If you wish, I invite you to come forward for a brief spoken articulation of your joy or concern. Remember, this is not a time for announcements. This is not the time for political positions. This is the personal. I invite you to remember to state your name and hold the mic directly out in front of you. And Nicolette, I'll invite you to help with the stones here at the bowl. After the joys and concerns in the room, we'll invite those on Zoom. Please come forward for the sharing of joys and concerns. And friends, one more stone for the unspoken joys, concerns, celebrations, and heartaches. I invite us to come together as a covenanted community in a few moments of meditation, prayer, and intentional focus. As we call on Great Spirit, reminding Great Spirit of our gratitude for this gift of Mother Nature at this time of awakening, at this time of renewal, at this time of new budding. Great Spirit, we also call on support and gratitude for Spirit being there as we hear both the celebrations and the concerns for friends and loved ones in this community, including those who continue to be present and those recently departed. Great Spirit, we are in a time of inordinate and unusual stress, chaos. We invite moments of stability each day, seeking a moment when we can control the stability of our lives. Great Spirit, we invite joy, each moment finding at least once a day a moment of joy, turning away from the stress and the anger. Great Spirit, we also invite community, because more than ever, we need one another right now. We need one another. So in that sense of community, let us sit for a few moments in silence, realizing our connections to one another. And then if anything arises for any one of you individually, I remind you that the caring associate for this morning is Cindy Stark-Reed, who will be at the back of the sanctuary if anybody does want to touch directly with Cindy this morning. Please let us be together now for a few moments of silence. Amen, and blessed be. I invite you to continue your meditation, or if you wish, join in singing our pastoral hymn, remaining seated. For Spirit of Life, the words will be on the screen. Please join in singing or continue your meditation.
Spirit of life, come unto me. Stir in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Go with the wind, rise in the sea, move in the hand, giving life the shape of justice. Roots hold weak rose, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me.
Amen, and blessed be.
Each week, we remind ourselves of the abundance of our lives and this community by giving half of our plate away to organizations that share our values. This Sunday's half plate benefits EcoCycle, which was launched in 1976 by concerned citizens who included members of this congregation, Rachel Setsky, Paul Gibb, and Mary Gibb. It's now one of the oldest and largest nonprofit recyclers nationwide. EcoCycle works throughout the community to innovate, implement, and advocate Advocate for zero-waste strategies to build a more regenerative, equitable, and climate-resilient future. You can text your donation to the number on the screen, or if you're here today, place a donation in the offering plate as it passes. Please give generously, as you so often do.
For the work and witness of this congregation and eco-cycle, your contributions are gratefully received. Thank you. How's it going in the new seats? I have a reading from the Unitarian minister Anna Garlin Spencer from 1929. I've retained the gender references as she wrote in 1929. The title is, Are We Outgrowing the Need for a Church? The church, considered as a unit, is the organized expression of man's religious nature. Strip it of all foreign powers and attendant aids, and we find that in it, which differentiates it from all other social influences. It is not now, as of old, the controlling power in all the higher concerns of life, but rather one of many moral masters of the world, with the translation of philosophy into worship, of ethics into personal character. On its ideal side, the church is humanity's vision of the perfect, put into pictured form. On the practical side, the church is drill master in the culture of the individual will toward right living. In a word, the church is man's poor attempt to make the divine manifest in the human. Today, in this paper, I consider whether or not man is outgrowing the church as an institution. This is still the voice of Anna Garlin Spencer. All admit that the higher sentiment from which the church has grown will persist and seek some ever new form of expression. But art and literature, science and philosophy, the home and nature seem now to many all sufficient temples. And no one can deny that whereas in the life of 50 years ago in America, all the better classes were constant churchgoers, many of our most thoughtful and earnest and virtuous people today either do not go to church at all or seldom and spasmodically. The book, the magazine, the newspaper are successful rivals to the sermon. The sanctity and rest of home, the healing and uplifting delights of nature supersede the church service for very many. And there are not wanting those who say that the church, even in its most rationalized and spiritualized forms, is but a halfway house from superstition's altar to the free air of natural aspiration in which each one is his own priest. Some words from Unitarian Reverend Anna Garlin Spencer, and I'm going to be unpacking the meaning of this essay. So the passage I just read from Anna Garlin Spencer sounds quite relevant to modern culture in my ear. But she issued these words in 1929 for the annual Berry Street Lecture. The Berry Street Lecture, also known as the Berry Street Essay, is probably the oldest continuing lecture series in the United States. It was started in 1820 by Reverend William Ellery Channing to call Unitarians and then eventually Unitarian Universalist ministers to best practices in ministry. Each year, a minister or ministers is selected for the honor of delivering this lecture, also called an essay, to reflect on ministry. And I believe it will be this year. If you attend General Assembly, you will have access to attending the Berry Street in person in Baltimore. I believe online, I hope online as well, but I don't want to commit to that. Anna Garlin Spencer was the first woman essayist. I know, 109 years after it started. The topic of her essay was the question, is Western culture outgrowing the need for church? It is important to understand the cultural context of any Berry Street essay, because church and religious practice change in response to prevailing social and political conditions. Spencer delivered her essay in between two world wars, when Herbert Hoover was president. Existential questions about survival following World War I stimulated Spencer's query about the role of church. But similar questions were raised as early as 1912, as in the Atlantic magazine, which I know many of you read. And by the way, do you know the Atlantic was founded by Unitarians? To commemorate the 200th anniversary of the Berry Street essay in 2020, a study of this lecture series called The Through Line was published. I just happen to have a copy of it here. Several ministers wrote reflections about these 200 years of essays, and I've contributed an article on the years of the Civil War years of the 1860s, in case anybody wants to read further. Spencer's probing the relevance of church was important in post-war America, just as this question is today. How often recently we've heard reports about the demise of mainstream religion and the rise of the nones, N-O-N-E-S, in American culture. Data's varied, but at least a quarter of Americans currently identify as nones, saying they are spiritual but not religious. Membership in many denominations has seriously declined, even as church attendance usually peaks on the heels of national crisis, after it did following 9/11, or more recently, 2 presidential elections in particular. Unitarian Universalist membership has held its own pretty well, even as many religious education programs are still rebuilding. To respond to her own question about the need for church, in 1929, Anna Garlin Spencer offered 3 reasons for the existence of church. 3 functions, as she called them. See if you find these functions valid today. First, she said that church matters for those who have lost a sense of the sacred worth in the midst of modern life. Spencer said that it is through the institution of church that trusting souls, as she calls them, can find healing and joy in a universe in which they occupy an important niche. The church helps us mortals understand what is eternal and universal. Church is the bridge to the Spirit, to the infinity which surrounds us. The second function of church. Spencer noted that in early 20th century, culture was becoming increasingly specialized in thought and action, leading to one-sided judgments. How relevant her comments of 1929 are to current political culture, in which so many Americans construct viewpoints and opinions in narrow silos. Spencer lamented that 6 days out of 7, most of us are only a link in the vast mechanism of social demand and supply. Devoting even just 1 day a week to church renews our connections with the wholeness of life, with a unity with one another, and with this process of being alive. Spencer asserted that this is the role of worship, to provide a setting in which we can consider what is worthy in life, the root meaning of the word worship. Spencer asserted that the need for worship was more pressing than ever. The third reason for church. She was concerned about early 20th century industrialization, which in her view was replacing church as the definer of American ethical values. She cited many secular social movements which were defining American ethics, and she worried that the church of 1929 lagged behind these social movements in what she calls ethical devotion. The church should offer encompassing ethics, to use her words. So then, after explaining these three essential functions of the church, that is, finding worth in life, providing one day a week to rebuild wholeness, and defining ethical standards, Spencer concludes that humans, as well as the natural world, need the institution of church. That is, my friends, church is here to stay. However, then comes the huge but. Spoiler alert, this is the core of Spencer's message, as well as mine for this sermon, and for our transition forum after the service. Spencer asserted that if the church is to survive, it must grow constantly. It must, quote, change its forms with the changing conditions of man's life, with the ebb and flow of life, as the generations come and go, addressing thoughts, feelings, and actions appropriate to the time. The church can and must be that place of comfort and quiet, poetic daring, training and blessing for all who work for the better world. But it can be so only if it is not encumbered with forms and creeds, as she called them. That is, by outmoded practices which don't address contemporary life. This is her core message, I repeat. The core must continue to change its forms if it hopes to fulfill its universal functions. Isn't the capacity to adapt, to change forms, to fulfill functions, an ongoing imperative for any institution? Not only church, indeed of any thriving endeavor? I love the British broadcasting series Call the Midwife. Maybe some of you are with me. 7 o'clock tonight. Set in economically challenged East London in the mid-1960s. They're now up to 1970. The midwives of the Order of Nonatus House are a team of nuns, that is N-U-N-S, not the other nuns, a team of nuns, sisters, and women nurses who live on site in Nonatus House. Their stories depict changing needs in public health in the mid-20th century. An episode a few years ago highlighted their capacity for change. Driven by threatened demolition of their beloved residence in the spirit of progress from city planning, the sisters agreed to bring in a team of 4 male doctors to live in the building with them, to train in delivery of babies. The sisters' small disgruntlement caused by new morning routines, such as who gets the bathroom and its limited hot water first, are minor, compared to the immense transformation in the male doctor's approach to caring for women in the throes of labor. Call the Midwife has aired many other stories about how institutions must change with changing times. In 1929, Reverend Spencer encouraged Unitarians to change their forms to keep up with changing times. In one humble sermon, I can't review the entire history of change in Unitarian Universalism, but I think it's important for us to be reminded more broadly about how the capacity for change is core to liberal religion. the liberal way, often speaks about the journey, not the arrival. For centuries, liberal religion has asked the question of our opening hymn, where is our holy church? So, I offer a quick survey of change in liberal faith. I wonder how much of this history you are acquainted with. And perhaps for newcomers and visitors, perhaps this historical sweep will offer helpful descriptions of Unitarian Universalism as you become acquainted with this approach. So just a quick sweep. Change was core to our 16th century European ancestors, known as the Counter-Reformation, who challenged the Calvinist approach to predestination to get into heaven. Or consider early 19th century American ancestors who called for religion to be grounded in reason, not doctrine or creed, and challenged the doctrine of the Trinity, hence the name Unitarian. Then even those well-meaning Unitarians were challenged by the Transcendentalists in the 19th century, who imagined the divine as residing within each person, not as an outside power over. Or consider how Universalism expanded under the influence of the social gospel movement of the early 20th century, which called the church to be at work in the world. Unitarians and Universalists increasingly embraced world religions, humanism, identity-based theologies such as Black, feminist, and queer theology, and more. And in 1961, the merger of Unitarians and Universalists also brought significant change in governance and administration. Today, Unitarian Universalism is countering white supremacy and centering the margins in race, class, ableism, and much more. Our commitment to anti-racism, anti-oppression, multiculturalism. So friends, let me now make the proverbial pivot sermons are supposed to include. To amend Anna Garlin Spencer's question in 1929, to ask not, are we outgrowing the need for church, but are we outgrowing the need for ministers? I know here we talk a lot about shared ministry, a concept which identifies every congregant as offering ministry. But with my question, I mean specifically, are we outgrowing the need for professional ministers? That is, ordained clergy. A profession dedicated to leading and sustaining the institution of the church, parallel to other professions, such as in teaching or healthcare or law. So obviously, to answer my own amended question, I will emphatically reply no. The church has not outgrown the need for ministers. Perhaps now in these challenging social and political times, informed clergy are even more vital than ever to guiding the universal functions of church. However, paralleling Spencer's advice to churches, I suggest that for ministry to remain relevant, ministers must also change with changing times and the people they serve. Said in Spencer's words, ministers' forms must continue to change to sustain the universal functions of church. So another sweep of UU history, this of UU ministry, as seen in those Berry Street essays I referred to. This sweep of history assures us that ministry has changed with changing times. So, for example, in the early 19th century, ministers usually preached about abstract theological doctrine, but they weren't much concerned with applications to real life. In my writing the life story of the first ordained Universalist woman, Lydia Jenkins, in 1860, I learned how she and other early women ministers made preaching much more relevant to the practical needs of women. It was said that when Lydia was in the pulpit, often there was only standing room in the sanctuary. UUs have continued in the forefront of gender change. In the 1990s, becoming the first American denomination to reach a majority of women clergy. Today there are intentional, let's hear it for the women, Today there are intentional agendas to support a range of sex, gender, and ableness identities. And across the decades, liberal ministry has also taken on new functions beyond preaching on a Sunday morning, adding religious education, pastoral care, social justice, community ministry, and much more. So then, pivoting one more time to remind you about the transition forum after the service. We will focus on ministry going forward in this congregation. The forum will be here in the sanctuary and online. I invite you to keep in mind Anna Garlin Spencer's reminder about change in church and ministry to inform your conversations about ministry going forward. This forum is part of the search process, the first stage of defining the ministerial search team. And the focus of today's forum will be inviting you congregants to know more about current roles, responsibilities, and expectations of UU fellowshipped ministers. That is, I will ask the question, what does a minister do? And to consider what ministerial applicants in the coming years will be looking for in congregations. In other words, asking you, what do you do? The forum is for everyone, not only eventual members of the search team, and not only members, but all congregants are encouraged to attend the forum. Growing in knowledge about the current state of ministry is for everyone, and it involves many more volunteers than those identified as an eventual search team. We included an outline of the forum. I hope many of you saw this. In this past Friday's Connections, we included an outline. I invite you to bring that copy as you wish to the forum. That handout includes many more details than we'll go over during the forum, but I hope these details will help you in discerning the next step in the search process. And then, to the extent we have time, we're going to partner with the task force guiding the next steps in ministerial search. Come to the forum and you'll see about both of those endeavors during that hour and 15 minutes. My friends, I know how busy and uncertain life may be right now. As you continue to grow in perspectives on ministry growing forward, I also encourage you to be as informed as you can about UU denominational activities and standards. I trust you've noticed how, for example, for guest preaching on my Sundays out of the pulpit during this interim time, I try to offer a palette of options for guest ministers, especially ministers in formation in this denomination. That is, who represent ministers of tomorrow, who's in the pipeline. Additionally, encouraging denominational connections, I continue to encourage you to consider attending the annual UU National Meeting called General Assembly this June in Baltimore, Maryland, in person and online. Information about General Assembly has been appearing regularly in newsletters. Even as the search process beginning this week will continue into the second year of this interim period, there's still also much more transitioning ministry to address. I want to assure you, I will continue to serve this congregation as faithfully as I can. I've been part of at least 5 other congregations in search. I have firsthand experience with how much ministerial search is powerful in building and enhancing beloved community and in deepening individual spiritual growth. So, my friends, may you all journey well as you explore the changing role of ministry and ministers. in this changing context of church life and a changing world. May all this be so. And in the spirit of going forward in change, let's sing about building a new way in the teal hymnals, number 1017. Words are also on the screen. Please rise in body or in spirit and sing lustily.
We are building a new way. We are building a new way. We are building a new way, feeling stronger every day. We are building a new way. We are working to be free. We are working to be free. We are working to be free. Hate and greed and jealousy. We are working to be free. We can feed our every need. We can feed our every need. We can feed our every need. Start with love, that is the seed. We can feed our every need. Peace and freedom is our pride. Peace and freedom is our pride. Peace and freedom is our pride. Without these, this world will die. Peace and freedom is our pride.
Friends, I invite you to remain standing in body or spirit as you can as we extinguish our chalice. We share the words to extinguish the chalice as Nicolette, aka Paul, extinguishes the chalice. We extinguish this chalice. Again, I invite you to reach out, touch the arm, the soul, the spirit of anyone near you here in the room and online, and consider in the room connecting with those online. For those of you who have come here seeking God, may God go with you. For those of you who have come here seeking life, may life return your affection. For those of you who have come here seeking a better way, may that way be found and the courage to take it step by step. When you leave here this morning, my friends, go in peace. When you return to this sacred space, return in love and in hope and in transformation. Amen. Shalom. Salam. Namaste. Blessed be. I invite you to resume your seats. We have a few announcements.
Mary Hill will be doing our announcements in a moment, but I believe you have something you want to say about the transition team first. And I found just one announcement that was timely.
So I'll just go on this mic so we don't need to keep adjusting the pulpit mic. Friends, I just want to underline and personally invite everybody to attend the forum I will be leading the conversation. The forum is sponsored by the transition team. It's for in-person and online. It's the first step in your entering this incredible journey of ministerial search. So please attend. I trust that some of you have found the outline, the handout. We will have a few extra copies, paper copies. But please attend. Please bring your questions. And then as as the transition team and I conclude that portion, we'll invite Nancy DeLaura and the search task force to also tell you about next steps. So please, if you can, attend the forum. Mary, I think you've got some more.
Thank you. First of all, it's on the program. It says Nancy DeLaura is supposed to do this. I'm not Nancy DeLaura, but we seem to have this theme going on, so I thought I'd continue that. I'm Mary Hill. I'm the very grateful member of the board. This is the end of my third year. I started out as assistant treasurer. That is being very, very well done now by Sue Reddick. And I just wanted to actually thank the congregation for the opportunity to do this. It's been a wonderful time working with fabulous people. So, and if you are lucky enough to do this sometime in your time here, you indeed are lucky. So, okay, and I just have one, that is the longer part of it. I'll just have one announcement. Tickets are available for Carmen Sandrum concert. She's a pianist and composer and a regular guest minister here. She will be presenting original music and Brazilian songs on April 25th, so that's coming right up at 7:30.